Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Experience Maker on LinkedIn Live. This is episode number 9, and I am Dan Gingiss, customer experience speaker and consultant. So happy to be with you on this Thursday afternoon while we're all still quarantining. Hopefully it's a good time to get together and discuss and learn and kind of share wisdom when we're all experiencing something new for the first time. And speaking of wisdom, my guest today has been a customer service rock star for a long time, and a guy that I've looked up to for a while, a guy that has been kind enough to be a friend and mentor to me over the years. We got a lot to talk about, but John DiJulius, the president of the DiJulius Group. Welcome, John.
Hey, thanks, Dan. I'm excited to be a guest on The Experience Maker. Love the name.
Well, thank you. And the whole idea behind it is to find people who are experience makers in their business or who help others become experience makers. And I think you're both, because you run several businesses, but you also do a lot of consulting with clients and help them. So tell us a little bit about what you do in your career across those 3 companies.
Yeah, for the past almost 30 years, built 3 organizations. The first one is a chain of upscale salons and spas in the Cleveland area. And then what I do for the past 20 plus years is, with the majority of the time, is the DiJulius Group, which is a customer experience consulting firm that works with some amazing brands all over the globe. And then we also have a nonprofit charity, Believe in Dreams. So it's all exciting. It's all around the human experience.
That is awesome, and I love that you sort of started in the salon business, and I know through your books and your articles and your speeches, you still talk a lot about that business. Do you use that as kind of a laboratory for learning
Exactly.
what works and what doesn't?
Yeah, I mean, knowing, what it's like, and trying to get, 150 team members in multiple locations to, buy into something, learning the hard way of, pushing something up too fast, untested, can really blow up. I think gives me good credibility with other organizations that, we had to figure it out ourselves on a regular basis and make sure it's profitable, and and morale and all those things that come with any initiative that's going to move the needle.
Yeah, I find that too. I mean, having had some experience in corporate America for a couple of decades, I do find that it helps to have this real live experience when you're talking to other people, because you can draw on those experiences, you can test things out, and it isn't just, listen to me because I'm a thought leader. There's actually some meat behind it, which is something that I've always loved about what you talk about. Sorry about that, everybody. Having a little bit of internet problems today, as I'm sure everybody is trying to get on the internet while we're all at home. So, John, I wanted to quickly talk about some of your books, and you are a very prolific writer. Just on my special autographed bookshelf back there, I've got Secret Service. I've got What's the Secret to Providing a World-Class Customer Experience. I've got The Customer Service Revolution, the best customer service quotes ever said, and I think I might actually be in that one.
You are.
And finally, The Relationship Economy. Now, I may be missing one or more books from the John.
No, that's it. That's it.
That's pretty prolific, man. So, tell me about the last one, The Relationship Economy, because it feels like that's something that in theory you've been saying for a long time, but also it feels like a little bit of a pivot for you from straight customer service.
Today's illiterate are those who have an inability to make a meaningful connection with others. And, there's no greater skill than we can have than the ability to build instant rapport with others, whether that be an acquaintance, friend, coworker, client, or total stranger. Unfortunately, with the digital revolution, our people skills have declined. Even, older, that's not generational specific. While the younger generations are relationship disadvantaged, even old guys like us have defaulted to devices more than ever. And, it's definitely a challenge. So, when we talk about what's going on today, whether, we believe in God or fate or nature, I think someone's telling us something that, we're out of balance. And we've all kind of gotten this time out and we've been put in our room. And I think there's a big gift inside of that. That we have to find what that gift is. And my favorite quote to this isn't happening to us, it's happening for us. And I am so energized by the opportunity that is presented. That it's going to sound harsh, but I don't want it to go too fast, because we can reinvent ourselves. And if we have the opportunity, there's so many things that we've been looking at the last 3 weeks, and we started talking about, one way we were like, all right, if this doesn't, in all 3 businesses, if this doesn't, resume back to normal, we have to make some tough decisions here. But then as we were talking about, what's going on and all the initiatives that we should have gotten to, that's been on the back burner the last, 2 years, that's shame on us that we haven't, but we're busy. We're in a crazy, everyone's crazy, just never get to it because we're busy. But it's stuff that we should have been doing that is critical to the evolution of our brand. It's critical to the evolution of our content, better education, better training, better processes. Well, all of a sudden I'm so excited because we have the opportunity to reinvent ourselves. We've been given this break that I have no doubt that, the companies that take advantage of it, the people that take advantage of this are going to come out stronger in Q3, Q4 of 2020, and definitely 2021 and beyond. We're going to have, something that is we're so much better off than had we not had this quarantine timeout.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it definitely has given us a chance to all kind of look inward and figure out whether what we're doing is in the right direction. For some of us that, make a living speaking and other things, since that's all gone away, it's really it's caused us to focus on different things. And I do think that in some ways the time off is a blessing. I'm hoping to use some of it to write my second book. I am nowhere near as prolific as you, but I've been wanting to do it, and maybe now's the time, just because I've got some more free hours than normal. But I also think it's true that this is a change that is going to last well beyond however long we're stuck at home, and that the way that the things that we learn now are going to apply to our business for years to come. I hate to say this probably isn't the last time we go through this. And
if we're lucky, it won't be, meaning that we're alive and we're in business for 20, 30, 50 years, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in 30 years, I've been through 9/11 and the Great Recession and this and other personal, crises that we all have that come up. And, there's something that I live by, Dan, and I tell my leaders, like I have personally found that I'm at my best when my companies and I are being challenged or fighting for survival. I mean, it's strange, but I actually feel comfortable with and more energized, when we're in this fight. And it's my nature. And while I see others panicking and making short-sighted decisions, to me, the whole thing slows down and my confidence level increases. I will tell you, right, just between us, I have to say that to myself a lot of times to believe it. But I do start believing it, and then I start, so it's like what you talk about, what you think about, you bring about. And I think it's really important that we realize that clients are looking at us, our employees, if we have employees, are looking at us, our children are looking at us, and we have to be that pillar and that strength and say, this will pass, and there is a gift, and it's for us to find what that gift is. And there's 2 narratives. In 3 years, there's one narrative that's, an option that you can look back and say, man, did I blow it and take advantage of that window I was given? Or there's the second narrative that I want to be saying, that I'm doing today is a result of, that sabbatical that I was forced to have. Airbnb and Uber came out of 2007, 2008, and all the companies have just been crushing it the past 10 years, came out of the reinvention of 2007 and 2008. When, I like a recession. I think a recession, I'm probably one of the few owners that prefers a recession over an economic boom. I mean, if you think about the pros and cons with a recession and versus an economic boom, okay, when you're growing really fast, excuse me, you start hiring fast. When you think about the a small business or big business in the early days, to hire someone, we'd interview 15 people, put them through the ringer to find the one. Mm-hmm. Well, then when you're growing, you need 50 people. You're, the first 50, people you find, you start compromising yourself. So he's the best of the group that interviewed, right? And then meanwhile, you got, a person in your company that's bad for morale and is an energy sucker that you're looking the other way because we have to find, more people. So, that, and there's a lot of, I think the recession is like a business enema. It does the cleansing, right? Even a turkey can fly in a tornado, and during an economic boom, there's a lot of turkeys flying. When it slows down, those turkeys start dropping, and it becomes an employer market again. It becomes a tenant market again, and the loyalty of employees and customers, really, seek out the companies that were doing it right. Long answer.
No, I think that's a great answer. And, one of the things that I learned so often in business, even during the good times, is that when you replace a low performing employee with an all-star, it's like hiring two people, because you don't have to deal with the low performance, which of course takes away from focusing on other things. And an all-star tends to be at least twice as productive as an underperformer. And it's one of those things that sometimes it's always hard to do because there's always humans behind it. And even when you're laying off an underperformer, they have a family and you're affecting their life, and it's a very difficult decision to make. But when you can find that all-star, it makes all the difference in the world. And so I see where you're coming from at this point.
Well, and it's also been an employee market, right? There's been more jobs available than people looking. A lot of people have to pay $15 for a $12 an hour job because they can't find good people. Well, now all of a sudden, there's talent available that we can all find, readily. And, that's a great opportunity for businesses.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So you were talking about your own personal confidence, and that you sometimes have to remind yourself, but that, you're looking at the opportunities here. What are you seeing from your clients? Because I know you work with a lot of really big companies. They're all struggling, and everybody's worried. So what are you doing to help keep them as calm as you are?
Yeah, what I did was I reached out to all my clients, and first, something I love that Vern wrote about recently, Vern Harnish, is the number one KPI metric that every person should be tracking is talk time, right? How many minutes? Not texting, not emailing, but reaching out to your employees, your colleagues, your vendors, your customers, all those. And I love that, and that's so true. And so, we've created some really best practices that I like. We're having Zoom calls all day with different teams on our thing, and then offering them to our employees. So just being a resource, a free resource right now for our clients to say, hey, I created a presentation, leading in a crisis, and what you have to do right now as a leader to show that confidence, to show that you have empathy and you can compassion for their fears and anxiety, that your customer experience is on center stage. Be careful what you're doing, drawing the line in the sand, leave the contracts in the drawer. Now's not the time to be pointing on, cancellation clauses and all that. Your employee experience is on center stage. And then the stuff we just talked about, the recession. So I think, doing that, I think really communicating a lot in a non-soliciting way. Another thing to table right now is our marketing and sales. Educate, offer advice on what they can do in the meantime to keep morale and focus. I think people really value, who's there for them when the chips are down.
Oh, totally agree. I mean, we're all looking for what I've been calling calm and confidence right now. And, we don't get it from the government. We don't get it from the media. And so where do we turn? I mean, we turn to our family and friends, but we also turn to businesses that we work with and that we respect. And when they start freaking out, then everybody else does. And so I do think it's so important to be projecting calm, even if you're not necessarily feeling it inside. Besides from my coveted John DiJulius book collection, I also have a particular item in my collection that is one of my most prized possessions. I'm going to see if it goes over here. This hat, the World Series hat, is a gift from John DiJulius because we had a little bet going. John is a Cleveland Indians fan, and we bet a cap that I'm telling you, I had the Cleveland one in my cart ready to send to you.
No kidding.
And then it miraculously turned around. But I assume you miss baseball right now as much as I do.
Oh my God, so much. My last speaking gig was March 2nd in Scottsdale. So I got to go see the Indians play a spring training game. So at least I got one game in. But yeah, I do. I miss sports. Sports is such a great distraction to real world problems and all that. But the cool thing was about that World Series is it was one of the best World Series that went down in history. And that's not just what Cleveland and Chicago people think. And I always said, listen, if we got to lose, the Cubs were a great story. And I couldn't, there's no one I'd probably rather lose to if I have to lose.
And am I not mistaken? Were you at Game 7?
I was at Game 1 and 6, and I didn't go to Game 7.
Okay, all right, yeah, I was at Game 4, which was a great game for your Indians, but not so much for the Cubs. I can tell you in Chicago, they've been replaying all of the World Series games kind of back to back, and it's really interesting when you go back. First of all, when you're missing sports so much, you'll take any sports,
right?
But when you go back and look at some of the plays that I don't know how to describe it, having only been through one World Series in my life, as you have with my team, that every play was so, like, every play was important, and there were so many things that you forget about.
Yeah. You don't get the bunt down, and you're like, in the first inning, and you're like angry. I probably love that of any postseason, the importance of every moment, but you could relay that to the experience, right? Of every touch point, anything can ruin it. And one of the things, I always teach is that the biggest myth is customer loyalty comes from, the results, the outcome. If you cook my filet medium rare like I ordered it, I'll be happy, or I'll be sad, I'll be loyal. If you get my tooth to stop hurting, I'll be happy. And if the presentation, workshop, or consulting package, puts a positive ROI, the company will be happy. And I think that has the least to do with customer loyalty. I know it does. Now, listen, I expect any good dentist to stop my tooth from hurting. I expect any good steakhouse to get my steak prepared. But, if they do that, I'm not going to call my friend Dan Gingiss and say, oh my God, they cooked my steak medium rare. It's the micro experiences, right, that really dictate customer loyalty. Of how empathetic were you along the way? Every time I was calling you to check in to see, if we're going to make the on schedule or whatever that is. I couldn't get the waitress. I had to set up a flare gun to get the waitress to bring me, steak sauce or whatever that business model is. It's the micro experiences in all those touch points that dictate customer loyalty.
Yeah, I so agree. I mean, what you described at the beginning is what I call the man principle, which is minimal amount necessary, right? That's the cooking the steak. I mean, yippee, a steakhouse cooked a steak. I mean, that's average experiences. But one of the things that I've found in some of my research, which I just love, is that consumers are actually more willing to share positive experiences than they are negative experiences. It's just that as consumers, we still don't have very many positive experiences. And whenever I do a survey of an audience that I'm speaking to and I say, hey, who remembers the last time that a company or a brand absolutely wowed you so much that you couldn't wait to tell everybody, be it friends and family or social media or whatever? And I'll get a couple of smattering of hands that raise their hand. And then I'll say, well, who remembers the last time a brand disappointed you? And every hand in the audience goes up, right? And so the problem right now that I see is that just our own observation, our own universe of experiences, there aren't nearly enough positive ones to stick out. There's a whole lot of blah, average, so, meh, whatever you want to call it. There's a decent amount of bad. And when a great one comes along every once in a while, yeah, we want to tell people about it, mostly because, unfortunately, we're surprised.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. And, you're the one of the social media, gurus in your tool belt besides customer experience. But I love social media for that reason, because it seemed to be the equalizer, right? I mean, the old adage, 50 years ago is if, you disappoint someone, they'll tell 10 people. Right. Well, really, what does that do to my brand? Right. I mean, but now the power that you have, if your customer experience sucks, you can't hide anymore. Right. People are going to find out about it. I love that. I mean, I just think it's the greatest neutralizer. I mean, from, the stuff that happened in the past years that's been all over that went viral, the United stuff, or, all these, viral stuff. If that would have happened, 20 years ago, no one would have heard about it. It would have been a he said, she said thing. But now we all have proof, and, you can see how companies react and handle it. And in everything, it's always, the reaction and the try to cover it up that always makes it worse.
For sure. And if I could bring this back to baseball for a minute, I actually, a few years ago, I wrote a piece about Steve Bartman. And I wondered, Steve Bartman, of course, was the poor guy that we think interfered with a foul ball for the Cubs in the 2000.
Him and 10 fans around him that tried to do the same thing, and then they were.
Well, so that is actually the point of my article was, if Twitter had been around during that time, it would have been the great equalizer, right? That story played out on television and in newspapers and through traditional media, and the world turned against this guy. And I sort of feel like if Twitter was there, you would have had just as many people saying, whoa, hold on, 10 guys around him did the same thing, or I would have done the same thing, or whatever. And I think that his legacy actually would have been quite different had social media been present. And it's amazing that was only 2003. It's not that long ago.
Right.
But now you're right. We live in a world where, as I like to say, there's no such thing as an offline experience, because anything like a guy being dragged off a plane can come online at a moment's notice. So, John,
were they able to bring him back after you guys beat us? Were they able to celebrate him and find him, and like they did with Bill Buckner, and let him off the hook?
Apparently he did not want to come back, but I did hear that they sent him a ring. So, which I kind of thought was a little ludicrous, but that's just me. So anyway, John, tell the audience how they can connect with you and follow you, because you do a lot of stuff in social media as well. And if they want to get your newsletter and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, everything's at theDiJuliusGroup.com, or on any social media channel, John DiJulius. Love to talk to you, and you can find me usually commenting on Dan Gingiss, because I love all his stuff. I don't know if I might have, I don't know if I emailed this, but I did write it. Your podcast, yours and Joey's last week, was awesome.
Oh, thank you.
It was the long one.
Yeah.
And, it was really great to listen to. If you want to tell people what the name of it is, I don't remember the name, but I got like all yours, but that was really a good one.
Well, thank you. It's the experience of this show, and episode 94 was a hour-long, double-length episode all about how companies should respond to COVID-19 with a customer experience lens. We had a lot of great examples. I mean, one of the things Joey and I both believe in is focus on the positive examples. There's enough people that'll beat up on United Airlines for breaking guitars or for dragging guys off planes. We don't have to pile on to that. But in an environment where we all got 100 emails from companies that all said the same thing, like we're cleaning our stuff and go see the CDC website. It was really fun to pick out the ones that did something different and that really stood out with some value in the communication versus just the checking the box, for example. So thank you.
And I think that's important. Yeah, I think it's important to see how people react, during these times, even in their community. And there's a fine line, right? I don't think if you have to lay off people, which is totally understandable, that we want to see you writing a $1 million check towards some charity, right? That would be a little but there's a lot of ways companies are doing really good stuff for people who are suffering, even worse than, the norm right now. And I think that goes a long way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we are out of time, but John, I want to thank you so much for joining me. It is always great to talk to you, and I could talk to you for hours because I always learn something from you, and it's just great to connect with another diehard baseball fan. And I do hope your Indians get to see the light sometime as well. Next week we're going to have.
We'll see you in the fall, hopefully at the you're keynoting the customer service revolution.
Yeah, I forgot to ask you about that. Please tell people about that event, which I can't wait for.
Yeah, we've had you before. So this is our 11th or 12th year, and we just got an incredible lineup. The Customer Service Revolution in Cleveland, Ohio, October 7th and 8th. And Dan Gingiss is one of our keynote speakers, and Alden Mills, a Navy SEAL, and Scott McCain. And we just have an incredible sick lab. Mike Rayburn is the MC and Hall of Fame entertainer. So we're really excited. And I think hopefully by that time, the new normal will be adjusted and people will need to get out. And most of all, I hope we can literally hug. I miss a good hug.
Yes. And actually speaking, I'm going to say one more story just because you mentioned this and you mentioned micro moments as well, micro experiences. At the last event of yours that I was at, which I think was 2017, you may remember this. You had a dinner that was like in a crypt or something. It was underground in like a cave, super cool place. And we're on an elevator going down underground. And I get a tap on the shoulder and I turn around and it's this really old guy. And he says, "Are you Dan Gingiss?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "I'm Captain Charlie Plum. I was on the same naval ship as your father." And I was like, "Say what now?" And it turns out, Captain Charlie Plum was an amazing speaker, and he talks about his time as a POW. Actually,
with John McCain.
John McCain. Yep, his story was unbelievable. But sure enough, he was on
and this guy who's a legend. And say, "Oh, by the way, are you Dan Gingiss?" I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yes, he tapped me on the shoulder because he's like Gingiss. I know that name. You must be related to Jody. And
wow.
So that was that is an experience I will absolutely never forget. So thank you again. Next week we're going to have Lori Brown on the show. I'm really excited to have Lori. She is the Chief Experience Officer for the Results Companies. They're a fantastic organization that provides customer services to lots of different companies. So we'll see her next week. Thank you, as always, for joining me on The Experience Maker. We're here every week at 4 p.m. Thanks again, John, and thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next week on The Experience Maker.
Thanks, Dan.